Go ahead and try to take off one leg into a dive. It doesn't really work versus if we do that nice split step takeoff that most of us that do parkour or do it well are familiar with.
Are you going to try a good
A
split
good one?
step so people can see it?
Try to get over the mat here.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We're here at Origins Parkour Facility. I'm Coach Tom, this is Coach Renee, and today we are talking about diving, and specifically the diving approach, so the approach into a dive. So that's for kongs, dive rolls, dive kongs, double kongs, all types of diving moves. The question I have for you, Coach Renee, is did people do a split step takeoff when you started parkour?
They did not. So when I learned how to do a dive kong or a monkey vault,
That's right, that's what it was called.
which was the shorter approach, or soda sha, depending on where you're from. These things were done with usually like a feet together sort of punch takeoff. So you run into your kong type move or dive type move, usually like this. I'm sure some people were doing some kind of like deviation because it does start to feel natural to do a split step, but it certainly wasn't being taught. You couldn't find it in any sort of tutorials, and a lot of the founding members of parkour were definitely doing this. If you go back and watch the videos, you'll see this kind of takeoff. And it wasn't for me until I started seeing, and I might be miscrediting here, but I started seeing videos once again from the UK, so athletes like Blaine, which is a name you don't hear too much anymore. What's his real name again?
Chris Rowett.
Just so we're getting it right. So Blaine, aka Chris Rowett, he was starting to do kong precision, so konging something and then getting some distance, and you would see the split step takeoff, and then there started to develop teaching and tutorials and things to learn it. And in fact, it was actually something that I didn't believe in early on. So I had arguments with fellow practitioners at the time, this is way back in maybe, I don't know, 05, 06, where I did not believe this would get you further, and we got into like heated debates during like parkour sessions, like trying to see who could get further with this or this.
Yeah.
Now it is widely accepted as no doubt this is going to get you further on a dive kong or a kong precision.
Yeah, so we're talking about this in terms of kongs a lot of the time, but this technique is really a diving technique. So, I mean, I don't come from a diving background. I don't think Coach Renee does either. But one way we can think about this is like, what would be like? Is there any precedent in other sports or activities? You were saying to me earlier off camera about lifeguards do a split step takeoff when they're diving into like the ocean to go save somebody.
Yeah, this is anecdotally what I've been told from people that come from water sport backgrounds, lifeguarding, you name it, where I'm teaching them in a class how to do a split step takeoff for a kong, and they start to like, oh, I've done this before. It's just like when I'm being taught when we're teaching people how to dive into water. And so I don't know if that's where it was borrowed from. Like, I like to think of it as something that parkour didn't invent. We didn't invent this sort of takeoff. It already existed. And that might be it. Like that, it might be from water diving. Again, if you know, leave us a comment. If you know perhaps what sort of sports this sort of split step diving technique came from. You also see like varieties in sports even where you're jumping straight up. So like volleyball, basketball, you see some kind of like split step takeoffs or like side on takeoffs happening. And then I think what happened is probably parkour athletes started to do it naturally and then came up with like maybe our own system, or someone from one of those other sports brought it into parkour.
Yeah, I think a lot of things in parkour are just emergent. They just happen because of the natural progression of the sport, the evolution of the movements that we're doing. It just ends up kind of happening when people figure out more efficient ways. But no doubt it could be possible that somebody just was like, hey, you know what, I do this in this other activity, I'm gonna bring it into parkour. So we wanted to talk today actually about the split step and kind of talking about a little bit of the common mistakes around thinking about split step takeoff. And the main one that I want to address is that a split step is both feet jumping. So both legs are doing the jumping, they're doing the work to propel you forward into the dive. And it's not just having your feet split apart as you run. We actually need to be loading our back leg and loading our hips. So a lot of times, I'll just kind of demonstrate like a really poor split step takeoff. A lot of times the split distance is way too large, and because it's too large, you can't jump off of your back foot effectively enough, and so that you end up putting all of your power into your lead leg, and then the only thing the back leg can do is kick backwards, and call it a donkey kick, and we don't want a donkey kick when we're doing Kongs or diving techniques.
Yeah. It doesn't work very well. Like I kind of have to. We set this up, so I kind of have to show.
Let's see it.
I want to back up a little bit. But if I am getting more of a single leg takeoff, I can still dive, not with as much power, and I end up feeling like, off axis. So if you want to, try for yourself into water or into something safe, go ahead and try to take off one leg into a dive. It doesn't really work, versus if we do that nice split step takeoff that most of us that do parkour or do it well are familiar with.
Are you going to try a good split step so people can see it?
Yeah. Try to get over the mat here.
Wow, cleared it. Cleared the mat. Epic. A couple things that Coach Renee had going on here. So his split step was not super wide. It was actually fairly narrow. This will change depending on the speed that you're approaching from, but just a good rule of thumb is that if you're standing here with a split, can you sit back over your back leg? If that's true, then you can probably push off of it. So as he approached, he set into that split step, his weight's over his back leg, so he can start jumping here, and then he jumps with his lead leg. So both legs are jumping here. There's also this hip hinge that's happening, so he's kind of leaned over so that when he actually starts pushing off, he's diving with a forward trajectory. So the second point I want to address here is not just about split step distance or width between feet.
Length, I think, is what we...
That's the word I was looking for. Length between your legs, but also how tall you are. So a lot of times people will try to approach a Kong and they'll be really upright. And with an upright position, we don't have our hips loaded, and that means our back leg is definitely not doing any jumping. So we really want, and a lot of times people will think about doing like a Kong, they want to get like their shoulders or their eye level really low relative to what they are Konging, so that they can not only get a jump with their legs, but they can also push off of their arms.
We got like another example over here too, because I think the illustration is clear when I'm doing an actual dive. So if I'm diving onto a mat, diving into water, it's like, oh yeah, someone can understand that. And I think where it gets lost is as you were alluding to there, is when we're doing, I don't even know how to, like the Kong pre-example. So not the, I think that's what we'll call it, it's like the Kong pre-example. So where I'm Konging something that's, my hands are actually going to be close proximity to me, but I'm trying to get as much distance as I can out of it. And it is still a dive. So we got that example right over here.
Excellent. So I guess I'll start with a really poor example,
a good example of a bad example.
A good example, or a good example of a bad example. All right. So. Okay. So if you watch that one, you can probably see that my back leg does a donkey kick. It kicks backwards. And it's because that's the only thing it can do with a wide stance. And being tall, I'm just kind of like levering myself over instead of actually diving and pushing my way over. So I'm going to show you, hopefully, a better example. There you have it. So that is a good split step. And again, the reasons why. A slightly less long of a stance between my two takeoff legs. And then also I'm ducking down a little bit lower. So I'm loading my hips, and I'm actually able to push with my arms as well. So split step takeoff. It is a jump off of both legs. Let me be clear. Do not try to dive off of one foot. Usually it doesn't work very well. There's, of course, scenarios in parkour where that's the nature of the challenge and we have to try to make our way and adapt. But in most scenarios with a diving takeoff, two legs is going to be better. And if we can, a split step takeoff will be better than a punch takeoff, which is both feet together.
I think I just wanted to close with here too, just for everyone watching, if you are a beginner to this technique, part of the reason why it's hard, and I think you already mentioned, is like the upright posture and stuff like that. That's hard because you're trying to go over something, and it feels weird to go over something that's, you know, above your hip height and getting down low like this. Also, it's hard to get low when you have speed. And so a lot of times what we end up doing in our classes is we start with shorter approaches and don't let people just run from the other side of the room when they're trying to Kong something, because inevitably they're going to need to slow down and understand that position. And it does require some precision, not the same type of jumping and landing precision, but the type of precision to get in the right spot at the right time and nail that Kong.
So if I can just give you one piece that you can kind of take away from this is start without an approach with a split step. Remember, make sure you can load your back leg. If you can do that, then all you have to do is practice jumping and lifting your hips up. If that feels pretty comfortable, you can try to jump into that position. So stay low with this. So jump into that split. You can add that takeoff, just lifting those hips. And that's going to be what ultimately turns into a good fundamental Kong takeoff. Or diving for dive rolls or dive Kongs or double Kongs or all those other diving skills you want to learn.
So leave us a comment, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.